one of my success stories with this film is that there's a role of an amputee, a Marine, and we were going to cast it out of Los Angeles. You get into this you have this idea that you're not going to be able to sell the film unless you have all these big names, and so you're all constantly looking for more name value. Our local casting director said, "You got to meet this kid from Albuquerque. He's great. Please meet him. Please meet him." So he came in and he auditioned, and my partner and I were like, "Wow!" I mean, amazing actor. And he got up and he turned to us and he said, "Look, I just, even if I don't get this, I just want to tell you, like, I really admire what you're doing. I was in the military. I was in the Army. My dad was a veteran. But I was on a plane. I jumped and my canopy didn't deploy. I hit the ground, survived. And it took me 10 years to get to my benefits. So I lived this, and thank you." And so he left, and we went, "Well, we got to give it to him." So I called him up, I don't know, about a week later, and I gave him the role, but I found out that he was living out of his vehicle when we gave him the part.
Whoa.
And he started crying. He was
Whoa.
homeless. Yeah, I mean, and right there, man, I mean, it was like it was off to such an incredible start. I am going to the shop.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. That's going to be exciting. And you said you're going to do some promotional stuff there? Like, will you be speaking to a crowd or just meeting people? Or?
I mean, it's a lot of handshaking for me. It's my fan base.
Yeah.
So it's not difficult for me to meet people at the SHOT Show.
I bet.
But I plan on going and hopefully dropping off some 5x7 cards, about the film and what we're trying to do, and the charities that we're giving to, and just information to leave at booths maybe, and hopefully, the support from the military and the veteran community has been incredible. So I don't anticipate any, issues.
Right.
I think there's man, I mean we'll talk about it, but I get these messages from veterans daily, and some of them heartbreaking, some of them really inspiring, but all of them positive, and it's exciting.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you said that's your fan base. You've done all kinds of things. I mean, Saving Private Ryan, The Unit, 24. How did you find this space in these sort of military law enforcement type shows?
Well, it pretty much it starts with Saving Private Ryan, which was my second big film out of school. Once you have the Steven Spielberg stamp of approval, everybody jumps on the bandwagon. I guess. I mean, I have something. Speaking of leadership, I think that I have an inherent leadership quality to me, and my voice, my command. I have sort of a hint of command in my voice, and I think that it's been something that when casting these roles, people have I've become this go-to guy to play soldiers, and I love it because it's really ironically shaped who I've become. It's my base of friends is largely military now, and having friends that have returned from combat with injuries. The charity work that I'm doing has become very important, So being part of this, of Private Ryan and a movie that was so pivotal within the veteran community, in that it started this conversation amongst a generation of veterans that really sat on their experiences, and that's part of a healing, and so to be part of that was very cool, and it just had this, it's really had an impact on my life.
Yeah, and you mentioned that this has drawn you to a lot of charity work and things like that too. Was there maybe someone in particular who you talked to that kind of got got that seed planted in your head that that was something you wanted to put a focus on?
Yeah, we while I was doing the unit, which was many moons later, I organized. I tell this story all the time, but it really is what sort of it was the impetus to this work that I'm doing. So I went to Iraq and Afghanistan a couple times, and on one of the trips, I met an Army Ranger who I became buddies with, and but buddies on the tarmac, and then we stayed in contact. And while he was in combat, we were communicating via email, and this guy, just a sweetheart of a kid, and in his late 20s, but big, strapping, the epitome of what you would think an Army Ranger would look
Right.
like, and he had survived 2 IEDs. One of them killed his entire team. He was the only survivor. And in our communications, this came up pretty quick, and he was voicing concerns to me that he couldn't voice to the military, i.e., sleep deprivation issues, anger issues, depression, just in this incredible fear of coming forward and asking for help.
Yeah.
I didn't have any answers for him, so I, lent an ear. But I tried to get him once he got back to expedite his medical through people that I knew, and we were not able to do that. And it took this guy, my buddy, close to a decade to get to 80% benefits. I mean, and this is somebody with significant traumatic brain injury. He got 20% at about the 6-year mark. So that inspired me to do something. This is early on in the war,
Yeah.
and while I was in communication with my buddy, we started to see more and more of these injuries. So. And by the way, shut me up because I just go on forever.
I love it.
Okay, but anyway, that's what started my charity work, and and when I came forward and started doing making connections to these incredible foundations, my friends who were injured started to come forward. So sometimes it just takes a leader to start the process, and this is the beginning of the process for me. My buddy Gary Sinise, who was in Will Gardner with me, is just a force in the veteran community.
He's a legend.
A legend.
Yeah.
I mean, and the work that he does is he's truly a saint and my mentor. And so.
Wow.
Look, this is the beginning for me, and but it's exciting to have to give my career purpose outside of the obvious sort of entertainment value.
And you said that Gary Sinise is your mentor. A lot of people wonder how to develop a good mentor-mentee sort of relationship. What are you looking for? How do you make the most of that relationship?
I mean, quite honestly, just to backtrack, I started writing Sergeant Will Gardner, while I was on the unit, after I got back from Iraq, and when the financing looked like it was going to happen and come through, you start thinking about casting, and I started thinking about people that would support the idea and support the give back. And Gary was the first guy, obviously, that I thought of, and we had met a few times. We always had a really kind of amazing connection when we were able to sit down and exchange a few words. So I reached out to him, and graciously he offered to be a part of this film, and we've become really good friends as a result. Look for qualities that I want to emulate, actions that I want to, that I want to replicate. I just somebody that I can aspire to achieve a certain level of success in this charitable work.
Yeah.
And he was that guy, and and he's got such a big heart that he brought me into it.
Do you ever kind of come up with a question or something and say, hey, this is something I should really call him on, or do you kind of think, what would he do, or how does he influence you?
He just, it's really simple. It's just the amount of work that he does for veterans, the impact that he has on veterans, and somehow the balance that he finds in his life. I mean, quite honestly, I don't quite understand how he does it, because he's always doing something for veterans,
Yeah.
and yet he has a life here in Los Angeles outside of that. His foundation is one of the foundations that we're giving to.
Yes.
And they do everything from they entertain the troops through his Lieutenant Dan Band. They build homes for veterans that are disabled, or veterans that are amputees that have lost limbs in combat. They outfit homes for veterans that need accessibility, wheelchair
Right.
accessibility, different thing, and I mean, they've brought. There was at one point that I thought was just something that was so wonderful. They brought about 1,000 Gold Star wives and their kids to Disneyland, and he's always visiting with World War II veterans and taking them on trips, and just it's endless, And so I know what his foundation is doing, and that was one of the ones that we chose to give to. Another one of the charities that we've allocated a percentage of the film to is called Warrior's Heart. They're based out of Texas. Started by a buddy of mine that was in Delta in CAG, Tier 1 operator for the Army. I don't know if that's true. And another leader.
Yeah.
And took charge and I mean, got this incredible foundation up and running, and they give to not only veterans but active duty service people, law enforcement, anyone that one of the criteria is that you have an alcohol and or drug dependency to enter the program. Once you're in the program, then they address PTS or TBIs. They do incredible work. They're changing lives. I've been witness to a few miracles coming out of that place. And then lastly, there's a charity called Higher Ground USA that's based out of Sun Valley, Idaho. That I've been involved with for some time. They use recreational therapy to help veterans, and are also addressing the homeless veteran crisis in L.A. and New York. So 3 well-vetted charities that are getting money and assistance to veterans.
Yeah, and in your story too, we see Sergeant Will Gardner goes through periods of homelessness and things like that, and I was noticing Bruce and I talked a lot about storytelling and Joseph Campbell and Hero's Journey, and often you see like a hero who makes a pretty steady trajectory up. With Sergeant Will Gardner, it seems he reminded me of Thor. Like Thor, he's kind of starts and he loses his hammer, and then things come back around in the end. There's kind of a loop. It seemed with Sergeant Will Gardner, he was often in a loop. He'd kind of be up and he'd be down. What were you trying to say about the character with all the ups and downs?
Well, I had to show the ups and downs, but I wanted to also create a character that that sort of held onto his strength, that didn't wallow, that didn't give up, that was dealing with things, but was fighting, was always moving forward. Let's say so, because what I did want in Success was to tell a story that was not about 2 hours of watching 2 hours of somebody suffer. You know, it was more about inspiring soldiers that were suffering to come forward and ask for help, or soldiers that had already gone through the healing process or were going through the healing process to reach out to other veterans that hadn't yet gotten, reached that point, and to help get them there. So it was really about, kind of creating this, this movement, that I wanted to, with this little tiny independent film, like I was saying earlier, it's just incredible how many veterans we've reached already, and what it's done. It's really cool, man. It's I've gotten direct messages from guys that have gone through the Warriors Heart program. From it's like I got to get through this. I get emotional to talk about. Sorry. So I know it's working, and it's a good feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to hear what you're seeing if you'd like to share.
What's coming back? It's for the most part, it's their messages saying, look, you like the last one that I literally yesterday, I got a message saying, I haven't finished your film. This guy's had it for 3 months. And, he said, I'm watching it in segments and pieces because I can't get through it. But, he's watching it and he's dealing with his issues in increments. And so I know it's affecting him, and I got a direct message from a woman that I ended up meeting, oddly. Her husband had gone through the Warriors Heart program. He had sent me a direct message first, saying, "Look, I just want to thank you for what you're doing. That program gave my kids their father back. I had a major alcohol dependency, and thank you for supporting it and spreading the word about it." And then she got in touch with me, and my producing partner, Mike Haggerty, and I were in Texas doing another military podcast for a group called Drinking Bros. I don't know if you know those guys. They're pretty funny. Anyway, and Warriors Heart Foundation happened to be down the road, so we went there, and his wife had tracked us down and showed up at the facility and gave me a big hug. So,
wow.
What else? Oh God, there's so many. There's so many. It's. I feel like there are people in my industry that do help. There's not a lot. Here's what is shameful to me is that when there's a natural disaster, or a fire, it's a natural disaster. Let's say for fires, earthquakes, whatever. But there's globally, we rally together. We do these telethons and raise millions of dollars, and we pull U2, and we pull all these massive bands, the Who, and whoever, and they come together and they do concerts and they do, but we don't do that for the veterans. And we could, and it's just odd. I just don't understand it. So that when, these guys see you make an effort, it's, man, I just recently I was at Balboa Naval Hospital. I went down to see the guys in that facility. I was at Pendleton, at their medical facility also, and the same reaction I got when I stepped off of the plane in Iraq. You see these kids that just, and truly are kids. You served, it's, I'm gonna guess the average age of our soldiers is probably in early 20s.
Yeah,
maybe,
I think so.
maybe younger. I mean, and when they get home, the reception needs to be there. They, when a celebrity goes to see them in combat, it's impactful. You realize
Yeah.
how much, what value the USO has. I mean, it's been around forever, but God, it's like to get to bring a little piece of home
Oh, yeah.
to the war, to these kids in combat is huge.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, back to your mentor, Gary Sinise. I mean, it's always amazing when I'd be at a Navy base and I'd see, next week the Lieutenant Dan Band is coming to town, and then a couple weeks later I'd be on travel and I'd be in a USO lounge and I'd see his picture autographed, and he'd obviously have visited the spot and stuff. And those little pieces of American culture. I mean, he being in movies like Forrest Gump, I grew up seeing his face, and then to have that familiarity and that connection, it's really really special, like you said.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And for you too, I wonder, you're in this spotlight, you're acting. I read up on you a little bit before this. Did you start in sculpture and painting and then kind of make a transition to acting?
Yeah, I did. I got my degree in fine arts. I was living in New York City. My dad was an artist, so and my mother was in law enforcement, and the rest of my family was in the military. So it's it's all there.
Yeah. What drew you to acting?
What drew me to acting? My mother remarried, and my stepfather is an actor, director, writer, producer, and so growing up, he would throw me into things. He'd say, "Go run over there and say this line," or we'd come to visit him at set, and so I had some credits and I had some experience, and it was always fun to do. It was always a hobby. It's not what I wanted to do initially, but then when I got out of college, I owed all this money for my student loans, and so I got asked to audition for a film. It was a big one. I ended up getting it. I came out. I paid off a chunk of my loans, and the woman that was casting it said, you should stay out here and stay on this wave while it's rolling."
That was Contact, right?
That was Contact.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, "Not many
It's a big
people-"
wave.
Yeah, it's a big wave. She was, So I hung out, and I got this audition for Spielberg, and I don't know, man. I didn't think I was gonna get it. I just sort of kind of blew it off because I figured that there was no way I was gonna get it, and then I went in and I got it.
Wow.
And that was weird. And, so we went through this boot camp, and there's a guy in Hollywood named Dale Dye, and he's a former military guy turned tech advisor. And he really I've been part of these movies, these kind of historical films like Private Ryan and Captain Phillips. I was part of the military involvement in that story, and then 13 Hours, and the unit was based on an actual Army Special Forces team. So our tech advisors always sort of start with a speech about we're not going to make a mockery of my experiences in combat. We're not going to make a mockery of the men and women and what they're doing on the front lines as we speak. We're not going to sugarcoat our stories. We're not, although the network did get involved in the unit, it happens, but it gets you in this headspace, especially me, and I think it's really what makes me stand out in this world. This is why I probably keep getting these parts, is that I really care, man. I take it all very seriously. I take the combats, I take the tactical work very serious. I'm always training. I'm always, I have buddies that are in law enforcement. We go out and do CQB all the time, and and I'm always on the range even when I'm not working. So and it's recognized in the community. You know, guys come up to me all the time. They're like, dude, you know, like I just watch you tactically, and you know, I'd go in with you. I'd be, you know, yeah, you know, whatever. I'd throw you in our stack, whatever they say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's great because it's a little, you know, a little validation, and it's appreciated, and you know, it's working for me.
Yeah. Does that keep it fun for you?
That does keep it fun for me. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
one of the things that I really love about, you know, these roles. Now, granted, I'm getting to the point where I'm going to start doing other things, like for instance, directing. One of the things that I love about directing is I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm actually using my art degree, which you know I had basically written off as worthless. But now being involved in a leadership position and all these different you know, departments on set. I'm really exercising parts of my brains that you don't get to access as an actor,
Yeah.
and so I'm enjoying that, and now I have stories that I want to tell, you know, as a director, and so I'm not going to abandon my acting, but I'm definitely going to expand. You know.
And in Sergeant Will Gardner, you're wearing all the hats. You wrote it, directed it, you starred in it. And I get the pleasure to talk to some people like yourself who have lots of talents. And one thing I find is that everybody kind of has a challenge of juggling if they're in a very high-level role, but they also have some technical things to do. So in your case, you're directing, but you also wrote it, you're acting in it. It's a lot to balance and to know when to focus on the specifics and when to kind of zoom out. How do you navigate those many hats that you wear?
That's a tough one. You know, there's I mean, I think I went into Sergeant Will Gardner having prioritized things that, you know, like first of all, my shot list was extensive. So I shot listed every single scene with having already sort of figured out the choreography, the blocking for actors before we got to set. So that's something that's not generally done because usually you give that to the actors and let them rehearse, and then you kind of see what they do naturally, which I did. So there was a lot of adapting once I saw what they wanted to do. But at least I had an idea as to how I wanted visually to tell the story using two cameras. There was a lot of rehearsal. My actors were so good that you know they really made it easy. I mean, I had a great cast. For those that don't know, it was like I said, Gary Sinise, Dermot Mulroney, who's a big star, Robert Patrick, who's a big star, Lily Rabe, Omari Hardwick, who's on Power, show called Power, he's a great actor. Ooh, I have a couple more stories I want to tell you, but yeah, so prioritizing, you know, and just understanding that there were so many layers visually that you want to, you know, when this is one of the things that I've learned from watching these amazing directors that I've worked with is, you know, how to layer the frame and foreground all the way back, and so. There were just a lot of meetings, you know, with my DP and we got on the same page during prep. You know, I had one of my buddies is one of the three guys from Rascal Flatts. He did our score.
Nice.
So we were talking about music while we were prepping, you know, color palette, you know, tonally where the actors should sort of, you know, meet. And then you just throw it all away and you go, you know, and hopefully it works, and it really worked for this one.
Yeah.
It's been great.
It sounds like your preparation, you had a lot of preparation, even if you didn't necessarily use it all.
Yeah.
There was a foundation for you to kind of build everything else off of.
And then, like I said, you just toss it, you know,
Yeah.
because on the day, everything goes haywire.
Right.
You just got to be ready. It's like combat.
I was gonna say, it sounds a
It's
lot like
you go
military
in with
planning.
a plan and then you toss it.
Yeah.
So yeah. So but so fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
So fulfilling. And one of my fears was that these big stars, were not going to listen to my direction. But once you realize that they are listening, then suddenly, you're at home and now we can collaborate. Then it became this incredible collaboration. We had veterans working behind the camera. We had veterans on camera. One of my success stories with this film is that there's a role of an amputee, a Marine, and we were going to cast it out of Los Angeles. You get into this you have this idea that you're not going to be able to sell the film unless you have all these big names, and so you're all constantly looking for more name value. Our local casting director said, "You got to meet this kid from Albuquerque. He's great. Please meet him. Please meet him." So he came in and he auditioned, and my partner and I were like, "Wow!" I mean, amazing actor. And he got up and he turned to us and he said, "Look, I just, even if I don't get this, I just want to tell you, like, I really admire what you're doing. I was in the military. I was in the Army. My dad was a veteran. But I was on a plane. I jumped and my canopy didn't deploy. I hit the ground, survived. And it took me 10 years to get to my benefits. So I lived this, and thank you." And so he left, and we went, "Well, we got to give it to him." So I called him up, I don't know, about a week later, and I gave him the role, but I found out that he was living out of his vehicle when we gave him the part.
Whoa.
And he started crying. He was homeless. Yeah, and right there, man, it was like it was off to such an incredible start because we gave this young veteran, a jump start with his acting career and got him back up on his feet financially and, gave him a big role in a movie with all these stars. And, it was good food for the heart.
Really special. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that character now. I didn't know that when I watched the film.
Yeah.
It gives me chills thinking about it. That's amazing. Wow. You'd said before, was there another story you wanted to tell? You kind of tapped.
No, it was that one. But I do want to say,
story.
yeah, it's a great. But I just I never want to get into bashing the VA because I know that there are veterans that have had amazing experiences with the VA and for a fact, and that the system that sometimes, from my understanding, can be very difficult to navigate, especially injured, especially with emotional injuries or brain tissue injuries, since that is what my movie focuses on. But to come out of combat and have to try to deal with how to get through this, archaic, system to get to your medical, I'm sure seems impossible for some people. And so until that system is improved, which I know we are doing and making improvements on it, but it's crucial that we support these foundations that are doing such incredible work for veterans and getting making up where the VA is failing, for lack of a better word. But yeah.
Yeah, to have some sort of advocacy behind people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a journey. Yeah, and you tell a story that is a physical journey too. I'd love to talk about how you picked sort of a road trip story, a motorcycle. Like, what was all that to say?
Well, I'm a big biker, and so I know that in that community, in the Harley-Davidson community, there's a lot of veterans.
Tons.
There's a reason why there is a bond between veterans and motorcycles. It's very healing. It's very freeing. that when you're on your bike and you're traveling across the country, it's you, your thoughts, and the wind in your face, and so you're forced to think. And I mean, I've done so many trips on a Harley, and I do some of my best thinking on the bike. You know? So that to me was were some of the reasons that I wanted to use the motorcycle.
I would just love to add. I
Yeah,
remember my first motorcycle.
Yeah.
I was 21 years old, and my parents had told me I couldn't buy a car. They said, "No, you can't buy a car, Brendan. It's too much responsibility, or something like that, or you don't have the money." And so I saved up all my money, and then I bought a motorcycle.
I'm sure
and
they
it
were
was
happy.
it was so fun.
Yeah.
And I remember being so excited
Yeah.
by that experience. Once I got past the learner's permit, I could go out on the roads. And there's something very special about a person and being connected to that simple machine.
Yeah.
And like you said, the wind in your face. And I
Yeah.
just totally echo that.
Yeah, if you don't, I think if you haven't lived it, you won't get it. You know, I know my wife never got it, but yeah, it's really special. Not to diss my wife, I didn't mean to diss my wife. But yeah, it's very special, man. And so and also I wanted to tell the story in segments. Like I had Will Gardner's son, as sort of. His desire to kind of rekindle this relationship with his kid, and so that got him on the road, and then once on the road, he meets all these different characters, and at the end of the story, I guess the broad strokes are that here's a veteran at the worst time of his life, he's displaced when we meet him, and with very little assistance, we discover that he's capable of being loved. He's capable of being a father. He's capable of being a friend. He's capable of here I go again, of healing his veteran buddy by giving him closure with his father. Like there's so much. He's so full of of things that he can give to people. Just so has the ability to do so much. With so little help. So. And then it didn't have a Hollywood ending, and it didn't have the the Disney ending, which I kind of felt was important. A lot of people fought me on that, but
Really?
yeah, we're so conditioned to walk out of the theater and it's all tied up nice and pretty, and you know, but I because it's not tied up nice and pretty in real life, I didn't want to do that in the story, and so I didn't. But yeah, those were the things that I wanted to accomplish, in the telling of this thing, and also I loved the idea of starting on one coast and ending at Arlington. That was kind of. Because it is the end of the journey for so many, and and for him to end the story there, I thought was powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like you said, to not put a bow on it. I think a lot of stories that leave a little bit of ambiguity and things like that are the ones that stick with you a little more.
Yeah.
And then you close with a bit of a message about veterans and the charities and things like that the proceeds are going to and everything. And that closing, I think, is something that people may remember or chew on later in a different kind of way. I think it's very powerful in its own way, even if it's not the norm.
Yeah, I agree.
A lot of the stories about finding purpose, too. It seems like for Will that's something that can carry him through. When he's in tune with that purpose, he goes a long way. How do you think people can get more in touch with their purpose? You mentioned your own personal journey. You kind of tried a few different things before you found your way into acting and then into the charitable work that you do now. What suggestions would you have for people?
To find purpose.
To find purpose, to really get in tune with that.
That's a good question. I mean, I think, I guess, speaking from my own experience, with my first, purpose came to me with fatherhood. So my kids. Before I had kids, I was somewhat directionless, and I didn't really have a political opinion. I didn't really have, any, need to go out and out of my way to help other people. I just didn't. I was living in New York. I was just kind of trying to find myself, and I found my girl, and then and then we had a family, and then suddenly I had purpose. My purpose was to raise these two kids to the best of my ability, and to give them purpose, and to try to so the next level of purpose, I guess, is to extend that to other people, that same sort of, look, ultimately you're leading by example. My kids are watch me.
Yeah.
They imitate me. My oldest is 18. He's going into film. So you have to set an example, and then you can do the same thing in the public eye. Like, for instance, I'm an actor. I have this is another thing. Like, I truly believe that entertainers and musicians, you have all these people watching you. You have the eyes and ears of so many people. Instagram, Twitter, whatever you put out there, people are listening and responding rapidly to, and so you have the ability to affect in a positive way and create incredible social change, or whatever, if you want to, if that's of interest, But so it's there. You just have to, figure out how to use it,
Absolutely.
And it's there even if you're not an entertainer. But for me, I didn't really understand purpose until I became a father.
Yeah.
To answer your question.
Yeah. Well, for those people who want to check out what you're up to and follow along with all that and have their eyes on you, where should they be looking for you before I ask my last question?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm Max Martini LA. On Twitter, I'm Max Martini LA. I'm less active on Twitter, but I plan on becoming more so. My Facebook is full, so Instagram and Twitter are the best places to follow along. We're working diligently to get to our profit margin with Sergeant Will Gardner. So please help us if you haven't seen the film. If you have seen it, please tell your friends about it. You can purchase the film on Amazon or iTunes. When we get to our profits and we get to the give back phase of this film, I hope to make a spectacle of that. In the meantime, I'm using other films to raise money for these charities, and we just raffled off 4 speaking roles in my next movie at a military function, charitable function, and so I'm continuing to do that work on the outside.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll put links in the show notes for anybody who's listening to the links you just mentioned. And Max, my final question is, you like you said, you have this command presence that's definitely brought you casting. I could tell as soon as you walked in. For leaders who struggle to have that kind of presence, for you as an actor, what suggestion would you have for people who want to act the part and really present themselves in that way?
I could tie it into the purpose question.
Yeah.
You know, it's leading by example, and I think it's just finding inner strength. You know, it's finding your confidence. It's when you're not confident, not showing that. And really, like, for me, I think it's just, look, as an actor, this is one of the things that is so hard to overcome are your insecurities. You have to, because what makes you attractive to people is your confidence. It's what producers want to put on the screen, because it's what's gonna drive ticket sales. Is people want to go see heroes.
Yeah.
They'll pay to see heroes, and heroes, although they do have, everybody has weaknesses. I think that if you're going to lead, you can't show those. You have to pick moments to deal with your vulnerabilities. Look, I boxed for a long time.
Oh.
It's this is kind of an interesting example, that when you're in the boxing ring and you have somebody that's 220 pounds in front of you coming at you trying to rip and wring a head off.
Yeah.
Right. If you get hit and you show that you're hurt, you're done. That's their green light. If you don't show it, they won't come at you. I just find that you find that strength, man, and that's where you live. You know what I mean? And it doesn't mean that you can't have weakness, but you have to relish in your strength and your confidence, and that's my advice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Max, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
And
Hey, thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
That was great.
Thank you.